Oh.
Hi everyone, it's Shar Moore here. I am so excited to be coming to you live. We are interviewing our cover girl, Maz Schirmer. So I hope you can all see us. Please, as you come on live, please say hello in the comment box. Let us know that you can see and hear us okay. We want to make sure we're not just sitting here talking to each other, which, mind you, we could probably do anyway. So welcome, Maz. Thank you so much for being live today.
My pleasure, absolute pleasure. Looking forward to it.
We are going to have a great time. So we're going to wait for a couple of people to jump online and just make sure that the sound's okay. Just going to check all of our tech settings because technology either works in your favour or against you. So we want to make sure it's working in our favour.
Just keep saying technology is my friend, technology is my friend, technology is my friend.
I say that a lot. Yeah. Awesome. All right. Well, I can see us on my phone. So we've got a few viewers jumping in now. So if you're just jumping on, hello, let us know who you are and where you're from. And we're going to dive straight into this interview because I know once we get started, we'll be talking for a little while now. There's a lot to cover. So say hello as you jump on. Let us know where you're from and we'll welcome you. So we've got 4 viewers on live. Hello. Who have we got there?
I don't know.
There is a delay. No, it's it'll come up in the comments in a second. Look, I think let's just dive in. So if you're just tuning in, we are interviewing our YMAG cover girl who's on this gorgeous cover of issue 3, which is on sale now around Australia and in airports. And YMAG, as you know, is all about empowering women to become the best version of themselves. And when we chatted to Maz last year about being on our cover, it was really important that what she does and who she stands for resonated with us as a brand. So we've got Anna from Perth. Welcome. So we needed to make sure there was a fit, and the cover person, obviously, they need to echo our message. And when we chatted with Maz, it just felt so right, like a perfect fitting glove. And, you know, everything you're going to hear today of what she's been through and what she's done and where she's going is amazing. So we were so excited when she said yes and is on our cover. Her story, for those that have read it, you'll know what I'm talking about. Like, it gives you goosebumps. And if you haven't read it, you absolutely need to. There's something in her story for everyone. So without further ado, I'm going to welcome Maz, and we're just going to jump in and say and start getting going. So Maz, hello. Thank you again for being on live.
Hi, Shar. Hi, Anna. I can see Anna.
All right. So Maz, tell me about your big why is to set 10 million hearts free. But before we get into that, let's just chat about where you came from. Kind of give us a bit of a background, please.
Yeah, well, the 10 million hearts free, it definitely is that big picture that I need to always hold that, especially, you know, I don't necessarily set goals, etc. I find that this really pulls me towards finding the right people and the right, you know, things to do. And where it comes from is wanting to break into generational negative emotional and mental patterning. And I just come from a bloodline where the patterns are, you know, not necessarily positive, and where there's a lot of domestic violence, child sexual abuse, and it just was the norm for us. And I just don't want that for my grandchildren and you know, on into the future, and all my greats. And so I come from growing up in a little place called Flying Fish Point outside of Innisfail in North Queensland. I'm the little girl, but I call myself a little foghorn from Flying Fish Point because an uncle called me foghorn. I had a very boyish voice, you know, deep voice. My nickname was foghorn. But just a little small beach town, and you know, I grew up with really young parents. My father was an immigrant from Germany, and it was kind of like a shotgun wedding. You know, they strapped me into mum's belly to hide me as much as they could, you know, and it was like a shotgun wedding. But so I think that the reason my father just, you know, he just didn't like me. There's no, you can't pussyfoot around that stuff. It just is what it is, and he just really, really didn't like me. So I just grew up really not liking life, I guess. I felt I was always miserable, the odd one out. I always felt like the odd one out. I had a young mum who loved me to bits, and but, you know, when you're really young, you're consumed with your own life, and I see that now in young parents as well, where you don't really realise that these little children are going to grow up and have their issues. But anyway, yeah, so, you know, yeah, as young as 8, I was just wanting out of this world. I just didn't want to be here. And, yeah, so then I went on, and I think it was acting out of not having that father's love that caused me to, you know, just be promiscuous in my young age. As young as 13, I was just searching for love, I think. Just searching for some sort of security and some sort of love and acceptance. And, yeah, so I ended up moving out of home really young and ended up in a marriage that, you know, it wasn't best for me, and I kind of knew it, but at the same time, you know, that's what I thought I was worth, the chewing gum under somebody's shoe. And I always say that because that is exactly what I thought of myself. That was my self, you know, my self-valuation. And I was like that till more than 30 years old. I thought that is exactly what I felt like. I felt like I wasn't, you know, the kind of person that somebody really could love. And, yeah, so I was running patterns though, you know, really. The domestic violence, the kind of child sexual abuse, guns at my head. I mean, you know, I was living in hiding because of a guy with a sawn-off shotgun that was chasing me around, you know, trying to track me down. So, you know, for more than, I always say more than 400 days. I don't say a year because I think that a year's nothing. It was 400 evenings. I was sitting at the window just looking outside every night when the kids would go to sleep, just looking for that shiny movement, you know, to think, oh, this is it, this is it. That was kind of the fear and terror I lived with. And that started when I was 26, when I left my ex-husband. And, yeah, so I've been kicked in the head and beat around and women's shelters and so on. So I've had, you know, 32 years really, I would say, was my stuck side of life. Like that's the side of the fence. I was on that side of the fence. And then at 32, I just, there was a line drawn. And then now it's been, you know, 22 years on the other side. So that's kind of a real quick summary there. But, yeah, we can talk about what that time was. I think that's what's more relevant to other people. And, you know, my past story, it was my reality. Every now and then I'm really, really reminded. A dear friend gave me this. One of my beautiful trainers gave me this, and it used to be my screensaver. I'll just share that because that, you know, I feel like that's where I'm coming from all the time, and I'm trying to get that light out. And, you know, there's every now and then there's blocks, and then there's all sorts of things. But this is a real reminder for me that, you know, your worth is not even a measurement. There is no such thing. And I think that my message now is to empower other people. I do not want that cycle to continue. I do not want families to experience this and think it's their fault. We all think as a child, you know, it's my fault, I'm a bad girl, I'm not good enough, I'm less worthy than everyone else, I'm dumber, I'm this, I'm that, and you buy into the abuser's words. And you can, you know, that's the thing, that's what we're fighting against. And what we don't realise is epigenetics, that pattern. I mean, I had a gun at my head, but if you actually analyse my bloodline, my mother had a gun at her head on Friday nights. My grandmother was tortured on every night of the week by a mad gunman ex-husband. And, you know, but in them days, you know, that story is actually in my book. But, yeah, it's a pattern. And then, I mean, tell me what's the chances of that, let alone I had several guns at my head by several different people. So that attraction thing and what we're destined for, and that's my whole message, that, you know, we are the symptom, we're the wearer now of the pattern, and we're the one who can break that cycle. But if we don't, we are the wearer, and that's that. And just understanding what that means and how you can change your life. And, you know, yeah, science really backs up everything that I say about this. And that's my ultimate message, is to link all these, you know, dots that people are not really linking, to realise how we can do something about this, you know. So I live and breathe to do that. So 10 million women, absolutely, definitely. Hi, Donna.
Oh my gosh, Maz, look, there's just so many things you've just said that we could just really delve deep into. And I guess, look, if anyone's got a particular question for Maz, you're online, we've got about 20 or so live. If you've got a question, now's the time to ask it, because we're going to be stopping every so often and answering questions. So, you know, you mentioned before about, you know, living in hiding and then having a gun at your head, and it's a pattern, and it's something that, when you look back, it was happening to your mum and your grandmother. So therefore there was something in you that was, I guess, attracting it to a degree. But you also mentioned as well about, you know, the self-worth and value you placed on yourself. So many women, I'm sure on this call as well, face that. We often compare and we often judge ourselves. What do you think is something that they can do? What's some advice that maybe you did that you think could help the listeners today?
Look, obviously, I believe you've got to go really fairly deep to break a cycle, but as in just a simple strategy, I really love the $20. I just always see that. I think, well, a $20, even if it's crumpled up, jumped on, spat on, it's still $20. If you find it in a gutter, you can always wash it off, and it's still the exact same value. And I think remembering that is really important, to remember your value. There is no such thing as value, and that's what Creatrix brings you into the awareness of, that there is no actual measurements, and that kind of is very, very freeing and sets us free. But I'll also share that my daughter went on and had a gun at her head, and I want to ask you, what's the chance of that? Seriously, what I also realized was the more I rejected it, the more I attracted it, and that's what really frustrated me. I was trying to break the cycle. I didn't want to be, I didn't want to pass it on. I didn't want to be like my parents. I didn't want to be like my family. I didn't want to say the same things to my kids. I didn't want all of that. And so the more I resisted, what I didn't realize was I was feeding energy into the opposite. And now that I've gone off and learned so much, I understand that your linguistics and your thought language is very crucial, because I was saying, I don't want this. I don't want an alcoholic partner. I don't want an abuser. I don't want this to happen to my kids. And, it's the word don't, because our mind thinks in images. There's no image for don't. So it just grabs up around the words don't, and it goes, so it doesn't hear don't. So don't want, abuse. It hears want abuse. So it's just got an image. So whether you do or don't want it, there's an image of abuse. The word abuse is something that is an image. So what that means is we're all going around with a little TV screen in front of us, and my pictures was the very thing I didn't want. So it's almost like I made it happen more.
Oh my gosh.
And the more I learned this, the more I was like, what?
What am I doing? And ladies that are listening, and guys, if you're listening as well, are you doing this? Like Maz just explained that, and it's something that a lot of us don't realize, that we are attracting. Again, our brain doesn't know the not or the don't word. So if you're saying it, what are you saying to yourself? What are your affirmations or intentions or your own script? Maybe comment in the message box, and we'll read some of them out. And maybe you don't do it now, but what did you do? Because it's amazing when we actually stop that cycle. So I guess the next thing I'd love to cover, Maz, is that was quite like, when you read the story, if you haven't read Maz's story in YMAG, run, don't walk to the newsagent tomorrow and grab yourself a copy, because it's really detailed and there's so many great things in there. But Maz, when all of that happened, what was your turning point? And I guess the moment that you found your why and decided that's it, that cycle has to stop. How did you shift from being in emergency housing to traveling the world 5-star, doing everything you wanted to do?
Well, there's been several. And I think the absolute biggest wake-up call that broke that pattern, honestly, there was a fence went up like that, and I couldn't get back over there. And I was, I was free of attracting that. But it's all well and good to just say affirmations and stuff, but really it's such a in the leaves kind of way of dealing with it when we need to go into the root structure, right down to the level through emotions, through beliefs, as low down, as deep down at that epigenetical meaning level. And that's what we need to change, is our definition of what something means. And but for me, how I got to know what I needed, like instead of just one belief and some words, it's like I got the whole damn download. And you don't hear of this happening very much, but you do see it in nature. Like we've all seen somebody famous who had like what we call a wake-up call moment, and they might wake up and they're in hospital and they open their eyes and the doctors are standing around and they say, you just had a heart attack. And that person always says the same things. They always say, time stood still and the world went silent. So that time standing still and the world being silent is what happened to me. And so the second time I was fleeing, 6 years after I had lived in hiding and finally come out, in the end I came out and said, shoot me, I can't do it anymore. And he didn't. But many years later, he kept the same pattern. He was just, you know, he was out to make my life miserable anyway. But many years later, and a whole bunch of what do you call them, domestic violence orders, they were called back then, but I don't know what they're called now, family, whatever, you know, where you try to get an interim order placed so that they can't come near you. So 6 years later, they said to me, well, you can't have more than that, so we can't protect you anymore. Why? You know, you're not even dead, so you keep saying this is happening, sort of thing. And I'm like freaking, I'm going, you don't get it. So they gave me one last thing, and they said the last thing we're going to do is put you on a relocation program and set you up in another town in emergency housing and get you out, because something had just happened with him again. And, you know, it was many years later and I realised, wow. So I did have to uproot and take all my family and choose a new town and relocate. That was it. And it turns out it was a really good thing, the best thing that ever really happened to me, I think. Otherwise I'd still be there. But being forced to not get support sometimes is a good thing, because sometimes we can have that entitlement. I really had like an entitlement, like give me more, give me more, give me more. How can you help me? You help me. But this was being left without that and being told, we're going to relocate you. You're going to go to an emergency house. We've got these couple of towns with a spare house. Pick one. And I was like in Innisfail. So I picked Mackay. I'm thinking, right, well, my ex, you know, he's an alcoholic. So, I mean, by the time he sobers up, you know, he would be, you know, he would probably turn around and go home. So I picked a town at 8 to 9 hours drive. I picked Mackay, actually, and relocated there. And, yeah, and when I was driving, I was in my old little Nimbus, it's called. I don't know if you know them, but they're really little seats, little Japanese cars. You know, yeah, the only one I could fit all my kids and my dog and everything. And we were in this little Nimbus and driving, and anyway, it was really unstable car. It was really untrustworthy, but we made it halfway. So I pulled up, back in them days, the old phone box, you know, none of this mobile phone. So I pulled up at the phone box to get inside this phone box. So I parked the car right up to the phone box door and left the lights on and the kids and the dog, you know, aimed at this phone box. And I went in to just ring my mum, and the kids are just playing and jumping all over the place. They didn't even know. They didn't notice much. And I went into this phone box, and all I remember is waking up on the floor of the phone box, and I just was kind of looked up over the headlights and through the windscreen, and the world was still and it was silent, and I could just see all the kids jumping and playing, and it was like slow motion, the dog, the kids. And in that moment, I don't know whether it was 1 second, 10 seconds, a minute, 10 minutes, no idea to this day, but in that time, it was like, this is the reflecting back at you of the choices you've made, and you are the only one responsible. And I looked at them, and I remember making a commitment like I'd never made before, and it was, I am responsible for you, and here you are with your life at risk, and I made those choices. I'm going to take responsibility for this, and I am going to break this cycle. That's it. And then I kind of came to, and everything had happened, and I'd had my first actual grand mal epileptic seizure in this phone box. I didn't have epilepsy, right? But I'll tell you what, Shar, before I left, I remember saying every day while I was packing and stuff, and I was saying, I'm just going to black out my past, I'm going to black out my past, and I'm going to start again, start fresh, start fresh. So it was a wake-up call. Like, a lot of people who have had epileptic seizures probably had never noticed this. And it wasn't for many, many years later that someone said, but what was it? It's not even in my book. Like, it's not even in my book, that moment, because it was like, oh, well, I just did all this stuff that changed my life. But no, it was this whole thing changed to that was filtering into, and that was the fuel that made me do the stuff, you know? And when you have a wake-up call like that, you never go back, because the whole world, your whole perspective shifts on its axis. And that's actually what happened. So that moment, and I will say it did not just get better at that moment, it got worse. But temporarily, I remember, you know, in that emergency house, they don't have floor coverings, they don't have fans. It was hot. It was really like my first thing was going to be to get some floor covering, some good old lino from the, you know, the $2 shop used to have them on a roll. And that was, I remember that being my goal. And I wrote down, you know, how many meters I'd need, and I was going to do this floor myself. And I got this job offer and it fell through. And I remember just curled up in the floor. I dropped the kids off at school for this new job, and I went home and I just curled up in a ball and went, can't do it. But then it happened. It's, you know, I then went for jobs and they weren't any good. And then finally I got a direct selling opportunity, and I'm like, oh, yeah, right, like that's going to work. Like, I tell you what, I'm even that desperate, I'll do that thing. But I tell you what, I'm going to quit in a month and then I'll go get a real job. I'll just say I even did that. But as it turns out, that thing had personal development. It fed my soul. I mean, it was makeup. It was hilarious. It'd take me like 90 minutes to put my face on. And then because I'd cry and have to wash it off and do it, I didn't wear makeup. I mean, I'm the person selling Coke who doesn't drink Coke, you know what I mean? And I didn't know where to put all this stuff, but I was, you know, but hey, it was, I finally found people that would respect me when I went out and did this, and I was like, wow, this is really different.
Isn't it? And that's what we all need, is that circle of people around us that can lift us up. So Anna's got a question here. She said, do you think there is an age time in our children's life that breaking that pattern is more important, so not to pass this on to our children? She can see patterns in her daughter that seem to be repeating from her early years.
Yeah, I get that, Anna. Seriously, I get that, because there's I would love one day that Creatrix, my mind process that is the same as a wake-up call kind of moment, but created on purpose. I would like that one day to be available for children, and I've already, you know, I've come up with certain models that I need to get out into the world. But and pregnant women, like, well, before they're pregnant, teens. I mean, I want, you know, babies to have just get this clean out. But what about all of us who? You know, our children are grown up. Well, what I've actually noticed, for example, I remember doing a breakthrough with Creatrix on a woman who, she had 3 children at the time, and one of them he's about 8 or 9 at the time, and from the neck down, he was paralyzed, but he had a very smart, intelligent boy, and, you know, a good sized boy as well. And she had these 2 other children. She had no support, and she had to get this bigger child. She had this little baby and another one, and she came to me so desperate, and she said, look, I don't know what to do. And anyway, she had the breakthrough, and I can tell you story after story exactly the same as this. She went home, and we had not worked on that boy, and one of the things that happened every night was he used to scream and scream and scream, trying to escape his body. Every night she put him to bed. He didn't want to be, you know, he didn't want to be in that body, and you know, whatever it was made him do it. He used to scream every night, and she said, I want to throw him out the window. And, you know, you could imagine, I mean, we can't imagine how that would be. But for her, it was, you know, but what blew our minds was the night she finished her breakthrough, she put him to bed, and he didn't scream. He just looked at her really inquisitively, and he didn't do it. And I've had breastfeeding mums exactly the same. They say the baby squirms and hates me. It won't even look at me, and it just pulls away, and I've got to try and force feed it. And that same night, it just looks at her, and that peace is there. So I cannot explain it. I don't claim to know how that works. I just know that we've seen it over and over again, where the children change when the mother lets go of her patterning. I don't know how it transfers. I mean, I'd love a lot more research to be done, but something definitely happens. So, and I would say, you know, by being a role model, that's definitely something. And I know I've got 4 children, and, you know, my oldest 2 are are more like the older me. They were smaller growing up before I turned my life around. So the younger two went on, and they're the uni kids, and it's a whole different, you can see and feel it. It's different. So, but look, and you're the role model. So it's all about role modeling, I think, in a way, with children and things like that. And I would love to, you know, my not-for-profit called Rise Above It is we'll be launching next year programs to give kids quick little techniques, because, you know, what they can do, because we're all messed up from our childhood, things that happened in our childhood. If it's going to happen, you know, we're all messed up from something that happened before we're 21, right? And how those things end up happening to us is one thing. But what I would really like to do is help our little fellas, our little, you know, little kids who, even if daddy might be bashing mummy up, or we don't know, or mummy might be accepting suppressive behaviours at home. So what's the chance of this child having a healthy self-esteem? So I want to go in there, and I would really love to teach children to manage and claim that from a very, very early preschool age. I've already got all the techniques. I know what I want to do. If little children and preschool teachers could teach these kids that, so let's say they go home and something's happening to mummy or something, they've got tools to do on themselves. Emotional and mental well-being and intelligence is really, really important to me. And that's, I believe, how, you know, those 10 million hearts are not all going to be with Creatrix and Innovatrix. They're going to be all sorts of ways, and, you know, even just through this. And if somebody just changes a behaviour, it's not easy, you know, when you're using willpower. So that's why I've had to create other things. But, you know, it's just time. And I know that what I've done is link some things that, you know, about gender and well, not gender, it's actual sex, because you're either born with the uterus or without. So that's not saying, you know, I don't want to categorise anybody claiming identifying as particular genders, and I don't want to, you know, everybody's a human being, but your biology actually matters when it comes to epigenetics. So if you were born with a uterus, all the cells needed to support the whole system that runs the uterus is within every cell, or you've got the other structure with the other bits in it. And so I believe that we need to educate understanding the biology of each other so that we can have better relationships. Like, women are out there doing, you know, personal development, but not all of it's really serving them because it's made by men, and how that disrupts the equilibrium of the way their hormones. I feel like we're all at ship navigating school, how to avoid the rocks and how to hit the target and get from point A to point B. But I really feel that is a masculine model, and we're the ocean, but we're at ship school. You know, it's like we need to be allowed to be the ocean. And I think before we can discover who we are, we've got to know what we are. And
yeah, definitely. There's so many gold nuggets in there. Listen, if you're watching, let us know what's working. So we're seeing some comments come through, but let us know what's resonating. Is this making sense? If you've got a question, Kylie Stretton has said, once I got home from Creatrix, my son in a wheelchair with cerebral palsy that cried 24/7 for 6 years straight, stopped crying. He's so much calmer now. I have 4 amazing kids, and they're all so much calmer and happier now. Her household went from chaos to calm. I mean, that's just one, I'm sure, of many. Sheila Bernard has to go. She's in the UK with family. Bye, Sheila. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for joining us from that far away.
She said professional interactive live session. She loved it. So that's great. Thanks, Sheila. So look, you've talked about Creatrix a little bit, and some of us on the call know about it, but so many people don't. So you could just give us an idea of, you've touched on it and how it's being used, but just tell us, if someone didn't know anything about it, how would you explain it, Maz?
Yeah. Look, it comes from understanding the system, that we are the whole system and not parts of us. And it's just a beautiful process that's done in the mind. It's really gentle. So let's say, well, I don't want to get too negative, but a woman who's been raped or something like that's happened, and these things happen. And so something might be traumatic for her. So to go and talk about that is not what she wants to do. And she might have tried that for a long time, but this is different in that there's no story. You're not even involved in the process. So it's very disassociated, but it's done all in the mind. So the client closes their eyes and there's all these perceptory positions and this whole story, and it's so fictional, but fictitious. So it's not a real, it's not based on something that the frontal cortex brain can actually understand. And we do that on purpose, because the whole idea is you've got to bypass that. That's the part that's causing the problem. So we've got to get back here to the emotional center and create new meaning. So how we do that, and to break the full pattern, is we take them on a journey and they solve problems, and there's a set number of questions, and these questions change their values, their beliefs, their thoughts, their behaviors, everything in one go. And we don't finish until it's very thorough and the characters and all of this stuff has actually there's no way that makes sense anymore, to the point of it being ridiculous. Then we know we've achieved the outcome. And then, because everything is perception, so when we alter that, where the person is, so for example, this woman who's raped, she opens her eyes. So here she is, she's been showering 3 times a day. She's a mum of 3 kids now. This has been going on for 6 to 9 years. She's been going to psychologists and she's just not getting anywhere, right? So in 90 minutes after Creatrix, she opens her eyes and she says, geez, those guys were effed up, weren't they? Like, she has fully released the problem from it being her problem. She's like, oh, I was just in the way. If it wasn't me, it's going to be someone else. So there's no attachment to her, that this problem. So it's like we're resolving unresolved traumas that have been passed down the line, and that's what we're actually doing. But we're not solving the problem in this current person's reality. To do that means the problem must regenerate. So if you understand the full science of epigenetics, you would understand, just like you can't change your crooked nose if that runs in your family, you by working on this current person, you're not breaking the cycle. So the storyline, I created it based on the science of epigenetics, knowing, okay, well, if we've got evidence now of 14 generations deep where they trigger a negative association to a positive thing, like the cow with a yummy food or flour, and they electrocute it at the time it smells the flour. 14 generations later, inexplicably, these calves actually have a fear of this flour, and it never existed, 14 generations back. So based on that truth, that's science, and they know that, I created this program to consider, well, if it happens for 14 generations, why wouldn't it happen from the beginning of when everything began? Like, why wouldn't it? So we don't know where something started. So I had to create something that considered that and factored all of that in, and I did. And, it was all a hypothesis at first. And I started to do it myself. This is after I learned many other modalities, realised, okay, they're falling short on that. That's because women come back in 18 months and they're not finished, because I took clients. And I was like, something's missing in this whole industry. What is it? It's something. And that's what I believe it was, because I was training business women. I would be flying 5 different countries outside of Australia that I was actually, teaching in and training trainers. And I'm like, why am I giving them everything I know and they're still not doing it? Like, why not? What is missing? I can't keep doing this. I don't feel right. And, I wanted to help the underdog, because that's who I related to. And it got to a point where my leaders would quit. I remember posting flowers, ringing into Flora and saying, drop flowers off. I was giving them flowers for quitting, because I'm going, this is in your best interest. You're not, you need to set yourself free from this pressure to perform. And it was just making her put on weight, and she was miserable and stressed. And I'm like, darling, this is not working, everything I'm teaching you. And that's when I realized this runs deeper, especially for women. And that's when I studied history and understood, the Holocaust of the women that no one talks about. 9 million women were killed. No one talks about it. No one even knows about it. This is our real history. This is why, I can explain in a way that makes sense as to why women feel so suppressed, so separated from who they truly are. And my mission is to bring them back to who they truly are and get rid of that stuff, clean out history, clean slate. That's what I want.
Like an exorcism. Oh, Maz, it just, you know, and again, I've chatted with you and I know a bit about it. I've obviously read the story and been part of that, but just hearing you talk about it and your passion and your conviction, I think it's something that it's so powerful, and hearing results from people, you know, not only on the call, but people I've met that have gone through your program and are now transformologists themselves. Like it's just amazing the work you're doing. So we talked at the start about your goal to set 10 million hearts free. That's a huge mission. Tell us now how you're planning on doing that. Like why is it so important to you, and how are you going to go about that? It's huge.
I can't explain why it's so important. It's really one of the, I cannot put it into words except to say I'm being led. I feel that. I can't explain it. And people ask me, I don't have an answer except to say, I don't know. I wake up, I live it, I breathe it. It feels like it's who I am. It's what I am here to do. I can't explain it. You know, all I know is my legacy, that I will max out my potential. I will self-actualize in my lifetime to be able to make that impact. I don't want just a footprint in sand. I want a footprint in you know, that runs truly deep on this planet, that leaves something that ripples out into eternity and was positive. So I'm all about the win-win-win. So how I'm going to achieve that is I need to find trainers. It's no good just going and doing one-to-one. I need trainers that will train the people to do the one-to-ones. And that's how we will do it really fast. We're in 7 countries already. I've re-engineered it now for men. We're out there, but the problem is really where it's at the moment. To take it further, I'm thinking big and I'm going, right, I need trainers and I call them transformologists, because you're not a facilitator when you do this. You're not a practitioner. You're not a coach. You don't do anything. They undo themselves. You just give them that space, and you're the one creating the environment for it by cleaning yourself out. There's certain elements that make a transformologist, you know, somebody that doesn't, the sort of thing that doesn't already exist. And this is where they own their own staff, and they are always getting cleaned out for the benefit of their clients and stuff like that. So it's a unique program. They are supported year round, because I just want to support the women who empower other women and give them the best foundation and give them the tools, give them the support, keep them cleaned out, give them sisters, give them whatever they need to do their best work. And through them, it will happen that way. So that's it. I'm looking for transformologists, and they are people who probably already coaches and therapists who finally realise there's something missing out there that doesn't break the pattern long term or go deep enough. So that's
amazing. Look, that's incredible. So, look, Maz, I know there's going to be questions, and if you're watching this as a recording, please still ask your questions. I'll be jumping in and checking, and I can email Maz and let her know, and she'll be jumping in and checking, so you'll still get them answered, because we want these lives to be really interactive. It's not just about Maz and I chatting. We want to help you, and Maz is amazing, and she wants to help you and set this 10 million hearts free, and you could be one of them. So if you've got a question, don't be shy. Now, if women want to contact you, or men want to contact you, or children want to contact you, Maz, how do they do that?
Okay, so what I'm doing is I'm rebranding from Institute of Women International. That's what we're known for. That's where we've got the large following. That's where we've been running everything from. But now that I've re-engineered the process tool for men, I had to upgrade. So globaltransformatrix.com. So globaltransformatrix.com. You'll also find me at mazschirmer.com.au, or on Facebook, Global Transformatrix there as well. And I've got something here. I'm really happy if anyone wants to kind of, you know, hear me talking. Yeah, I mean, share that. That's a marathon to help coaches and therapists grow their business in a way that kind of shortcuts the crap that, you know, I had to go through to really realize all that really matters at the end of the day. If you're on the planet to transform lives, then, you know, we often forget that when we get caught up in the word business and the word I want to be successful in a business. It's not about that. And once you take all that away and you get back to what's truly important and what you're doing and the service you're doing, and if that impacts that person enough, it rewards you, they refer you. You don't even have to worry about business success, money, all of those things. They follow, and that's the female way. And you know, I'd love to give my best stuff to anybody who wants it there.
That's fabulous, Maz. Look, it's amazing. I've shared the link for the marathon that Maz talked about, and I will also share all the links in the recording as well. So if you want to reach her, I'll put all the links on how to do that. And look, you know, this has been fabulous, Maz, having you on board. And it just, you know, YMag, like I put this magazine together quite a few years ago now when I was struggling in business, and I wish I'd known more about it. And even if it was there then, I don't know, but Creatrix would have helped me a lot. But, you know, I went broke to BMW after the Queensland floods and really faced a really tough time in my life. So some of you may or may not know my story, but being Indian and engaged at the age of 11 to 15, being told my whole future was dictated to me, supposed to be married at 16, living in Thailand, having kids. And so, you know, I was never encouraged to follow an education, or why you don't need an education to have children and just be a housemate, right? So I had a lot of those things there. So when I faced this, nearly facing bankruptcy basically after the floods, and all of those feelings and emotions and patterns, as you call them, came up for me because, you know, in society, in Indian culture, you do as you're told to do, and Indian girls shouldn't amount to anything. They should just say yes and look after the family. So when I'm laying on the bathroom floor at 2 o'clock in the morning, you know, looking at my life going, they were right. You know, I shouldn't never have attempted to start my own business. Who did I think I was? How did I ever think I was going to do that? I'm not even educated formally, you know, no qualifications. So it was like all of those patterns and limiting beliefs came up. And what got me up off the bathroom floor at 2 o'clock and decided not to declare bankruptcy was my why. My biggest purpose is to help underprivileged children in Thailand have a chance to choose their destiny, because that's what I was presented with at the age of 15 and a half by my dad that raised me, my Australian father. He looked at me and he basically found out about the arrangement and the engagement, and he said, is this what you want? And I didn't realize until I was in my 20s starting to have my own family that he had presented me an opportunity to choose the rest of my life. And as I got older, I said, I want to pay that forward. So as I was laying there and struggling in business, I'm like, why isn't there a magazine to help me? So walking into a newsagent, looking for something like YMag on the shelf that was empowering, that didn't put anyone else down to make themselves look better, didn't feature gossip and celebrities. It didn't tell me I was too fat or too skinny or too old or too wrinkly. It was just uplifting. I couldn't find anything. So I created YMag online 5 years ago as a digital product. And after 4.5 years and lots of research, I decided it was time to print this product and put it in women's hands. And, you know, we print on beautiful luxe paper. It's a very thick quality product, weighs 500 grams. We want women to devour it and treasure it and kind of love it and keep it for years as a coffee table book. And, you know, having Maz, someone like you on our cover and having you resonate with our readers. And I know you've had some great interest from the magazine for people wanting to be part of your world and be part of your course, because your story and who you are and everything we embody at YMag is a beautiful fit. And I'm so grateful that you were part of our first cover. Thank you so much. And just being able to chat candidly today on the call as well. I think it's great, you know, reading your story, but hearing about you firsthand and your passion. I just think that it's going to go so beautifully for women out there that may have seen you and read about you, but then they can go, wow, I can really hear your conviction to your 10 million hearts. And I just know, I know you'll do it. I know you. I've known you for a long time. Absolutely no, it's done. It's just the universe.
As good as done. That's what I say. It's as good as done. The how will come. The how will come. Always does.
Absolutely. And the how's not our business, right, Maz? And that's the other thing. People often say, how am I going to do that, Shar? I said, don't worry about that now. Just know why. And ask the right questions to the right people. Do Creatrix yourself as a client. If you love it, then, of course, be a trainer. But do it to clear up anything that you may not know. You could be self-sabotaging. You don't even know it.
Not good enough. We've all got not good enough. And that's something we've inherited, you know, throughout our, you know, by just simply being born a female.
Definitely, exactly. And we don't know that. And often we get frustrated because we use the C word. We compare. We should never compare. Don't compare yourself to me. Don't compare yourself to Maz. Be the best version of yourself. It's on our YMag cover because that is exactly what you want. We want you to be the best version of you right here, right now. That's exactly
unlayer that. You need to unlayer that, and then that's when you can just, you know, be who you are. And how do you know what your gift is if you've got all this stuff layered over the top of that, like a big shell and a mask? You know, we're all like in this big, you know, that was me. I was just, I was so deep within there, like just like that core of an onion. We need to get those layers off so that you can just go like that, you know.
Absolutely. And, you know, imagine like I love that gift analogy, and I talk about that a lot as well when I speak. And, you know, imagine if there was the most beautiful gift with the most precious gift inside it under all your dirty washing, for example. Wouldn't you just dig through all that washing and get it done so you could unwrap that gift? That's exactly what this process is all about, and why we find people like Maz to put in our magazine and share this with you is because we want you one by one to peel that dirty washing off that gift, unwrap it and use it. Because guess what? Here's the thing, ladies and gentlemen, you are the only one who has been presented with that gift. That gift has been given to no one else on the planet. That's your why, your purpose, your reason for being here is in that gift. And if you don't unwrap it and your time's up on this planet, today, tomorrow, 10 years, 100 years from now, it goes with you, and the world will never get to see that gift. So please don't wait another moment. Unwrap it today. Make a decision right now, like Maz did in that phone box. She made that decision and then her life shifted from there. Make that decision right now today. Please leave us a comment of how you've enjoyed today's webinar. I knew we would flash through 45 minutes in no time at all.
Yeah, time always, like I said to you before, like, you know, I live in this bubble of, you know, bring it all in and let's do this thing, and I just wake every day and stuff happens, and it's always leading in this right direction, and it's all, you know, it's pretty cool. I feel like, you know, I'm not the kind of person that is very structured. I'm very right brain, but you know, it's just another way of doing it, isn't it? Everybody's got their own way. Hey, Ramona, you got rid of your good enough. That's exactly right. And that's when you shine. Look at you, baby.
And that's it. You know, you're living life in flow, and that's what happens, ladies and gentlemen, when you are living life in flow. Time doesn't matter, bills don't matter, stress doesn't matter. It just flows, and you trust in the universal energy. You do the work, which you need to do, of course, but it's amazing when that happens. So we could chat for hours on here, and we may even have Maz back in a couple of months and just see what's happening in her world and how she's going with her goal. If you'll have the time, Maz, that'd be great. Have you back on.
Anything that's empowering, you know, and look, women are dear to my heart because that is what I know well. And you know, like in my business, like I was responsible for training 10,000 women a year in a, you know, at least a couple of times a year. And that's my thing. That's what I want to do. I'm here to help in any way I can. And that's the whole idea.
Brilliant. So, look, we're going to put the links in the live. Please leave us a comment. Let us know how it resonated with you today. And, Maz, thank you again so much for joining us live today. And we look forward to chatting with you again soon. Thank you, everyone who's watching live or watching the recording. Really appreciate you being here. And we'll see you all again soon. Bye for now.
Bye. See you, Sonny. I can see you there. Sonia, Ramona. Who else? Ooh, Kylie. Yeah.